Hello and welcome back to video 2 of my assignment 2 on my course, which is Sports Coaching and Development for UCLAN. So, as I talked about in the past video, I'm going to now talk about the RFU and what it's to do with my placement, which is equals RFC. So, the RFU is the national governing body for rugby union, and it's been around since 1871. So that means that there's a lot of history behind it, and there's a lot of schemes that have worked and not worked in the past, like there has been with many other national governing bodies. But I'm going to tell you about the few of the schemes that we're included with, and what works for us and what we're trying to do at the moment. So the RFU firstly has done a lot for the club. It's provided funding which goes towards building infrastructure such as expanding the clubhouse and the facilities that we use, such as the AshTurf, which was recently renovated in the summer of 2019. That made it more accessible for ages between under 6 and under 18s to train and go on it for before games or just generally run as training session. The RFU have also provided the funding for new equipment and new gear, such as post protectors, corner flags, tackle pads, cones, balls, all the stuff that would be very expensive for a club which is generally run by volunteers, as I mentioned before. The club are using different schemes that the RFU are providing, such as the Level 2 Coaching Awards, the cards, principles of play, and treads all fall under that. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about each individual course, and then I'll go into the Level 2 coaching. So the cards course stands for Creativity, Awareness, Resilience, Decision Making, and Sportsmanship. That tries to improve the player as a whole and think and create game situations where they try and unlock them different characteristics and express them in a game. It's very good, and I've been on all these courses that I've suggested myself, and they've helped me implore them more into a game and more into a training session for my players, and I've seen real results from them. The principles of play, there's a lot of principles of play around, but I'm going to mention a few, such as contest possession, support, and go forward. They are more the fundamental skills that you would use in a game, such as the rucking, tackling, passing, running, that sort of thing, where it's more physical. And then the cards I mentioned in the previous video, I mentioned in the previous video, which is teamwork, respect, enjoyment, discipline, sportsmanship. What I like to do with my under 8s is when we finish the session, I try and get them to recite what treads means, not only in a rugby sense, because obviously it is important in rugby, but treads is very transferable and accessible in life, and I like to make sure that they keep remembering it, as I have done since it got introduced when I was as a player and I thought about it myself. So the Level 2 Coaching Award I've been on recently, and it teaches you what to do with different situations, such as managing game behaviours, which is managing someone who may be difficult or may have learning difficulties, as opposed to managing someone who is very active and very able to do an activity and do it correctly. Also, we looked at the game zone and skill zone session, which is where you go into a game and play through the game, and then you jump out into a skill zone, target a specific area of the game that you want to work on, and you work on it in the skill zone for about 10 minutes, and then you go back into the game zone where you're playing it through. That is a good example of a whole part, whole practice. So whole part, whole practice is more used in the skills such as a tackling game. So the whole part, whole would be the whole a tackling game using all types of tackling. The part of the session is where you take out a specific piece, so it may be side-on tackling that isn't as comfortable with a lot of the players. That is where you would run a training session based on side-on tackling, and then once you feel they're capable of it, you would throw them into another game situation, incorporating all sorts of tackling, but looking if their side-on tackling has improved. I'm going to talk about another scheme that we've used, which is mainly run by Sport England, which is Inner Warrior. This is similar to This Girl Can in the FA sense, but Inner Warrior is mainly run from Sport England, and it's heavily emphasised in the girls' game. I mentioned before that I helped out in under-18 girls at Eccles, and this Inner Warrior thing does work. We ran it a couple of times, and our participation levels went through the roof. And the Inner Warrior is essentially where you put on a session, an open session for anyone to play. You want your players to come in, and players who maybe you come back from injury or haven't played rugby before or thinking of coming back to it after taking time out. What I want to talk about now is the current participation levels in rugby, and that is a massive focus for the RFU at the moment, especially at grassroots. And I'm going to talk about the more local, so Eccles for me, and then the more national, which is a whole of England. So in recent years, on a national scale, the participation levels of people in rugby union have gone down by roughly 20% from 260,000 in 2016 to 240,000 in 2018, which, when you think about it, it may not seem a lot, but in 2 years you're losing 10k people a year, and it's not a really good sign. You want to improve that as much as possible, and running schemes such as the Inner Warrior and various pitch up and play methods will increase that in the future. At Eccles scale, I've been there a lot longer as a player than as a coach, but I know from higher up the chain that we had, in 2014, we had around 300 junior players registered to play, and that has now dropped to 220 junior players registered in 2019. That is a staggering amount. That's 80 people lost in the space of 5 years, which you can account for people leaving, people growing past the age of 18, but that may mean that we are losing people in the gaps between, which obviously isn't what we want. There is, however, data to back up that the increased participation are going right, because since 2014-15, when England hosted the World Cup, our broadcast income for the RFU has went up 57.3%, from 31.6 million to 49.7 million pounds, just from broadcast alone. So that's the income which the RFU can use and then fund to help grassroots, which they are working on, and you see more and more funding coming through now. In the next video, I'll talk about what the next steps are for Eccles, what we can improve on, and what my overall thoughts about the general direction of Eccles is, and also linking that to a much bigger picture in the government sense and a national sense.